Hi everyone, Justine Leslie here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I help awaken, sensitive, and empathic souls intuitively navigate this crazy world. So today in this video, I want to talk about, and I actually haven't talked about this on my YouTube channel yet, but it's something that has come up, I've seen on Facebook many times before. And it kind of combines the two things that I'm really passionate about. Passionate about a lot of things, but the two things that I'm really passionate about that I'm talking about in this video is different love connections and recognizing an abusive connection. And that's kind of where this video is going. So this video is titled How to Decipher Between a Trauma Bond Connection and a Twin Flame Connection. And they might seem a little out of place, but they get confused more times than you would think. And I know trauma bond is more of a psychological term and a twin flame is more of a spiritual term, but in this video I'm combining both because they're very relevant when it comes to this topic. I will start the video by explaining. I have everything written down, so if I'm looking down and reading notes, I just want to make sure I covered it all for you guys. But I will go ahead and explain what these terms mean, and then I'll go into why we oftentimes confuse the two, and then I'll also talk about three separate ways that we can decipher what is a twin flame connection and what is a trauma bond connection. And hopefully that'll help you guys, because what it'll do is that most oftentimes we think that we are in a twin flame connection, but we're really in an abusive connection, also known as karmic connection, but it's really a trauma bond that is connecting us. So we really can't decipher between intense chemistry and intense love and connection. And those are the two things that we really need to make sure that we're that are in clarity for us, because we don't want to be in abusive relationships. And I just hate seeing you guys use that as a reason to not leave an abusive situation. Let me know if that makes sense. And it's just so important that we can decipher what it is and what it is not. And to be completely clear and transparent, love is abuse is never love. Love is not abuse. And I'm just making that super clear. And when I say abuse, I mean emotional, I mean mental, and I mean physical. That includes psychological under the mental part. So it's abuse of all kinds. Now, have we in our lives as individual souls, as humans, have we manipulated somebody, guilted someone, emotionally abused someone? Yes, unintentional. We're all human, okay? But I'm talking about chronic, when it comes down to chronic abuse. And I'm just telling you right now, your twin flame connection would never put you in that situation where it's chronic abuse. The twin flame connection is more related to a soulmate connection than it is actually a karmic connection. It's something in between, but again, just to reiterate, it's not abusive. So let me go ahead and start with how do we define twin flames. So a lot of different spiritual teachers have different definitions of what a twin flame is. Again, a way to describe it is something in between a soulmate connection and a karmic connection. A karmic connection is a connection you have with somebody that you are reliving out karma, or people call it karmic debt, and we call that dharma, from previous lifetimes and previous ancestral lineage. So it might be a connection that is passed down that you need to learn the lesson of the connection. So it's really karmic. It's just a cycle of getting this karma out, and really learning the lesson from it. You're not meant to be with this person. It is abusive. I've been in a couple of them in my lifetime, and they really make you see a lesson that you maybe have not seen before. You will repeat this karmic connection with other people, as I have as well, until you learn the actual lesson. This is not a twin flame connection. This is definitely usually abusive. The other connection is the soulmate connection, which tends to be a really beautiful connection. And people actually end up in really harmonious, healthy relationships with this connection. And it's really just based on you're just matching and mirroring your soul. It usually is very peaceful, very harmonious, very healthy, very conscious. I talk about conscious relationships a lot. And it usually goes smoother. It's usually the ones that are long-term, a really good friend. I mean, karmic connections can be long-term, but it's usually smoother. It's just the way that you feel in the connection. You feel respected. It feels authentic. It feels really good. So that's what a soulmate connection is. And people, like I said, usually end up with these people and usually marry them and all that good stuff. They're usually people's best friend. Now, twin flame is something in between these two. So there are spiritual teachers that say your twin flame is the other half of your soul. I do not like to label it this way because we are we're whole, worthy, and complete on our own. We do not need anybody to complete us. Okay, that is a bad, false narrative that we set ourselves up with to look for our other half our whole lives. We're completely whole and complete right now as we are. Your being, your essence does not need another soul. You are one with God, universe, source, however you want to say it. And all relationships are always an added bonus. Now, with the twin flame, it's really just almost you share the same soul. So you will definitely be able to recognize this, and I'll go into this obviously later in the video, by how your soul feels around your twin flame. But really, your twin flame is there to teach you more lessons. And teach you a lot of stuff that you don't want to see. And most of the time about twin flames, people say it's so painful and all of this stuff. And I'll get into that in a minute, but it's painful for different reasons than it is a karmic connection. And again, I'll get into this in the video. But it's really, it's usually not smooth like a soulmate connection. There is push and pull. There is runners and chasers. There is times when you're in union and not in union. And that means together and not together, but really telepathically, which I've been told, I will be transparent, I do not know who my twin flame is, and they are not in my life, telepathically, like they could have certain gifts and things like that between the two of them. But it's a really, really soul-based connection. Again, it's push-pull, not abusive though. So that's the way that it's more like the soulmate connection. Okay, so I laid that all out. So why do people start confusing the two? Why? Okay, so the first thing, I mentioned it already, it's the push-pull. So a lot of times when people are in push-pull relationships, they automatically feel like it's their twin flame because they keep going back. But that's not necessarily true. They keep going back because they might be in a trauma bond. They might be in a karmic connection, which means that trauma bonds are just, let me define trauma bonds. So trauma bonds are, and again, let me just say I'm not a psychologist, so I'm going to do the best I can with it. But from my knowledge, because I've been in a trauma bond a couple of times, is that basically it's about your brain chemistry releasing cortisol, I believe it is, and we, like, literally our body almost needs, almost like an addiction. So breaking a trauma bond is just as hard as breaking any kind of addiction to drugs or alcohol or whatever is going on in your life, whatever your addiction is. It is super, super hard. It is so, so strong. This is why when people are in domestic violence relationships, when people say, why can't they just leave? They can't. It's not that easy. They usually will come running back because it feels like their left arm has fallen off, right? And this is part of codependency as well, and I'll do another video about that. But it's really that strong bond that is chemically bonded to the other person. And then we actually think that's love, right? And that's another difference, right? Is that when we're in a trauma bond, we are not actually in love. And I'm sorry to tell people that, because people do spend many, many years in a karmic connection with that trauma bond, and it's not really love. It's really just chemicals. It's really just, if you can put it this way, it's attraction at the same time, even if you're disgusted by the person and you're still with them. So that's why it's very confusing. Being in a connection like that is extremely confusing. You don't even like the person, but you can't be away from them. And it's really, really hard. So my heart goes out to a lot of people that are still in those connections. It takes a lot to get out of them. Please consult a counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever works for you, to try to get you out of that situation. It could be very dangerous. So that's like really a trauma bond. So, okay, so why do people confuse the two now that I just defined them? Like I said, and I was saying, the push-pull. And that's usually it, right? When you're in a trauma bond and you leave, you come back because of that trauma bond. But the same kind of situation happens, the same kind of experience happens in a twin flame connection, because what we're doing is your twin flame is usually mirroring something you don't want to see, and then you run the hell away. And that really depends on, it could be either or, but it's usually somebody's running and then somebody's chasing. So it's kind of like that back and forth. And as you can see with the trauma bond, it's very similar. It's a back and forth, but the trauma bond is based on chemicals, attraction, and not really anything at a soul level. Like at the soul, sometimes you don't even like them, like I mentioned. So that's why people see the experience as being the same, but it's actually very different on a soul level. The other thing is familiarity. So why do we have these trauma bonds? We have these trauma bonds because we probably had a chaotic childhood, and we believe that thriving in chaos and having relationships that are where somebody's ignoring somebody and somebody's chasing somebody, and somebody's ignoring them or emotionally abusing them. This is actually what most kids have grown up with, unfortunately. Emotional neglect, emotional abuse, physical abuse, that kind of thing. So we feel like this is very familiar to us, and that's what really kind of sparks that love feeling, which again, it's not love. It's just feelings of something being familiar. Now with the twin flames, we can also kind of get that familiar feeling, but again, it's at the soul level. So if you see a pattern here, guys, it's really about at the soul level, not necessarily what our body is asking for, what our brains are asking for. It's really at the soul level. So is it important to be really connected to the self to be able to decipher these two connections? Absolutely. It seems like a pattern here. And then the third thing, and I already kind of mentioned it, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, guys. I'm just making sure I get all the information out there, is that people do have this idea that twin flames are supposed to be toxic, that they're supposed to be abusive. That cannot be more farther from the truth. They are more like soulmate connections than they are karmic connections. So it's so important to understand that and debunk that myth, because it's really supposed to be a very euphoric relationship when both of you have worked on your stuff. And when you both work on your stuff, that is the time when you both can be in union. And when you do, and here's the thing, guys, I'm saying when you do because not a lot of people, even after discovering their twin flames, are able to be in a relationship with their twin flames because they refuse to do the work, which is super, super hard work. And I'm talking about our shadow work. I'm talking about our childhood traumas. I'm talking about the deepest, darkest stuff that we have, that really needs to be cleared, healed, and really transmuted to be able to actually be with this person. So sometimes we don't even end up with our twin flames. Okay, so let's move into, hopefully this makes sense so far, guys. So let's move into 3 ways, the way that the video is titled, that we can tell if it's a trauma bond or a twin flame. I already kind of put a little bit of nuggets in this video already, but let's jump into it. So the first one, and I'm moving right into breakup / separation. So basically what I mean by that is, have you guys ever heard of the quote? I wrote it down. It says you can tell a lot about someone by the way they leave you. And that is so true. If anybody has been in a karmic connection with a trauma bond, and the person discards you, this is very popular in a narcissistic abusive relationship. When it happens, it's called the discard, and they leave you, and they leave you very horribly. No empathy involved, no respect, no authenticity, no love really present, because it wasn't really present, right? So you can really tell away that if it's a trauma bond or a twin flame connection by the way that they leave you. So a twin flame connection would feel more healthy. It will feel more peaceful. It will feel more respectful. It will feel more like you're being heard, you're being seen. It definitely is no breakups or clean cuts, but it definitely feels more like it feels more peaceful. It doesn't feel like you need therapy for 100 years after. So when you're in a trauma bond and you get discarded or you break up, however it is, you feel devastated, you feel grief, you feel distress. And most of the time, guys, in these types of connections, we have PTSD. I've seen it 1,000 times. The stronger the trauma bond, the more likely you will have PTSD. So that is not going to happen to you in a twin flame connection. So you can tell a lot by the way you guys break up and how somebody leaves you. That will tell you all you need to know of whether it's a trauma bond or a twin flame. So that's the first thing. The second thing, so I mentioned this already, they're both pretty painful connections, right? Both trauma bond and twin flames. Now, the pain comes from a different place. I already kind of hinted to this, but let me explain this. So the pain from a trauma bond comes from the actual abuse. So the pain comes from manipulation, intentional guilt and shame, gaslighting. If it's physical, obviously the pain of the physical abuse, that kind of thing. So, and yelling and screaming and, calling people stupid, calling people's names, the silent treatment. I could list off a million ways people can abuse you, but basically it's abusive. And that's where the pain comes from. When you are in a twin flame connection, the pain actually comes from your reflections of your shadow. So it comes from, like, you're creating the pain. Your pain is coming from you. They're just mirroring the pain within you. So they're making it come out, right? Does that make sense, guys? So it's actually, in this particular instance, in the twin flame connection, you're not a victim at all. You are feeling your own pain. This is a really good thing, because when we start to feel, we start to heal. So that's what your twin flame connection is all about. They're here to help you heal yourself, so your soul can be as whole as possible to be able to connect and be in union with your twin flame. That's their whole shtick. That's their whole thing. With the trauma bond, you are a victim. You are a victim. It's not your fault. You grew up this way, thinking that relationships are supposed to be this way. This is a chemical bond. So the pain is literally because you're a victim of a domestic violence situation. And by the way, guys, I use domestic violence very easily, because emotional and psychological abuse is domestic violence. And so you're a victim, 100%. You are... you didn't do anything to cause this. You had a terrible childhood, etc., etc. However, let me add here that it is your responsibility to do the healing and to get out of this relationship. No matter how many times you try, keep trying. However, it is completely understandable that it is really, really hard for you to get out of it. I already mentioned that. I totally get it. But it is our responsibility to make sure that we create healthy relationships in our life. So I just want to put it there. But if you see that, so when people say twin flame relationships are super painful, that's what they're referring to. They're referring to the pain that they have to endure internally within themselves, looking at their own essence, looking at their own soul, and being able to heal themselves based on what the reflection is of the twin flame. Okay, so the third thing is you're not that different on a soul level. So let's take the trauma bond, for example. The trauma bond is also, in a karmic connection, is also looked at as a mirroring. But it's not mirroring your soul, right? It's mirroring your ego. So that's super, super important. And I already mentioned it earlier in the video, is that we really need to have a very good idea of what is soul and what is ego. And once we can recognize that, we can start recognizing the different connections, right? That's kind of the silver lining. So basically, the trauma bond mirrors your ego, right? And then the twin flame connection mirrors your soul, right? It's your soul. It is a reflection of your soul. So it's usually it's basically the yin to the yang, right? And you guys usually have the same values. You look at the world the same way. It's, again, this is a reason why it's more similar to a soulmate connection than it is a karmic, because usually in a karmic, and with a trauma bond, is that we do not view the world the same way. That's where a lot of the conflict comes from, right? And one of them is, right, that your abuser, the person you're in the connection with, they believe abuse is love. That is the number one value. Love is a value. How do we love each other? Do we love through God's love, through conscious love, or do we love through abuse? And that is the number one thing where we can say, hey, we don't have the same values. So it's really different on a soul level, because again, the trauma bond is more of an egoic connection, 100%. So it reflects the ego. Okay, so those were 3 things. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. It is very similar. So I do want to add, don't beat yourself up if you're having trouble figuring out what kind of connection you're in. I just mainly did this video because I'm very, very passionate about making sure that we're in the right healthy dynamics, and we're not using twin flame as an excuse to be in a domestic violence situation, because you are so powerful and you are so beautiful and you are one of God's children, and you deserve a connection that is so beautiful, so healthy, and really, really amazing. And even if it doesn't come in the form of a twin flame connection, a soulmate connection is a really beautiful thing as well. And like I said a million times in this video already, it seems like, is that most of us do end up with our soulmate connections, and it's a very beautiful, beautiful union. So if you don't end up meeting your twin flame, that's totally fine. A soulmate is totally great as well. But I just want everybody to be aware there are karmic connections, and there are things called trauma bonds where we believe we're in love, but we're not. Love is not present. And I just wanted to make that super clear for anybody that is going through that. And hopefully you guys have your comments as well. So I would love to hear from you guys. So put it in the comments below. If you want to see more content like this, please like this video and subscribe to my channel, so I know to put more content out about this. All right, cool. All right, guys, thank you so much. And I will be posting more videos like this, hopefully, and have a wonderful day. Bye.